All right, if you're prepping for your finance qual, you know Grossman Hart 86 is one of those papers you absolutely have to nail. It's a total game changer. So let's break it down, piece by piece, so you're ready for any question they can possibly throw at you.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big puzzle of ownership itself. Then we'll dive right into the mechanics, contracts, control, and the infamous hold-up problem. After that, we'll look at the three main ways to structure a firm and figure out who the most important investor really is. We'll even see how this all plays out in the real world with an insurance industry example, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you'll need for your exam.
Okay, first things first. Let's get right to the fundamental question that Grossman and Hart were really trying to answer. Why on earth do we even have firms? I mean, really think about that for a second. You had these giants, right? Coase, Williamson. They talked a lot about transaction costs. But Grossman and Hart came along and said, hang on a minute. They asked a much sharper question. If you could just write a perfect, ironclad contract that covers every single possible thing that could happen in the future, why would you need a firm at all? The whole concept of who owns what would be kind of pointless.
And that right there is the absolute heart of the issue. This dream of a complete contract, it's a total fantasy. In the real world, contracts are messy. They're incomplete. Why? Because we can't predict the future, and trying to write down every single possibility would be impossibly expensive. It's in that gap and all the stuff the contract doesn't say that ownership suddenly becomes the only thing that really matters.
This quote just cuts right to the chase. It's Grossman and Hart's big critique of the older theories. They're basically saying, look, you can't just slap a new title on someone, call them an employee instead of an owner, and then magically expect them to stop acting in their own self-interest. That doesn't solve the problem. Something much more fundamental is going on when one firm buys another. And their theory is all about explaining what that something is.
So this is the bedrock of the whole paper, the core assumption you got to get. The contract you sign today, ex ante, before anything happens, is always going to have holes in it. You just can't specify what to do in every single possible future state of the world. It's too complex, too costly. Everything else in the model is built on this one simple, powerful idea.
And that assumption leads directly to the paper's most brilliant definition. What is ownership? It's not just a deed or a title. In this world, ownership is the possession of residual rights of control. It's the answer to one simple question. When the contract runs out, when it's silent on what to do next, who gets to make the call? Whoever has that power, that's the real owner.
All right, so now that we've got the key concepts down, let's see how they fit together to create one of the most famous problems in economics, the hold-up problem. This is where all the trouble starts.
The model's timeline is super simple. At date 0, you sign the dotted line and decide who owns what. Then, at date 0.5, the managers get to work. They make these crucial, relationship-specific investments, the kind of effort you can't really write into a contract. Then, at date 1, the future arrives, a state of the world is revealed, and now the two sides have to sit down and bargain over the profits that their investments just created.
And boom, here it is, the hold-up problem. The whole issue is that you make your critical investment before you know how the final pie is going to be sliced. Because the contract is incomplete, you know you're going to have to renegotiate later, after your effort is already a sunk cost. The model assumes you'll split the new gains 50-50. So what does that mean for you? It means you only expect to get back half of the value you create with your own hard work. And since you know this from the very beginning, what do? You pull back. You underinvest. Both sides do this, and the whole venture creates less value than it could have. It's a classic inefficiency.
Okay, so underinvestment is the big bad villain here. So how does allocating ownership, those residual rights of control, help us fight back? Or does it even help at all?
Now this is really fascinating. Notice, there's no magic bullet. Ownership doesn't actually solve the problem. It just changes who gets hurt by it. If the firms stay separate, non-integration, both sides have a little power, and so both of them underinvest a bit. But what happens if firm 1 buys firm 2? Well, firm 1 gets all the power. That fixes its own investment problem. In fact, it might even overinvest now. But at the same time, it completely crushes firm 2's motivation. Firm 2 will severely underinvest. Integration just shifts the problem from one person to the other.
So this imbalance, this trade-off, leads us directly to the main punchline of the whole paper. This is the central conclusion you have to understand for your exam.
This is it. This is the key. You're never going to get the perfect first best outcome. That's impossible. The name of the game is to pick the best second best option. You have to choose the ownership structure that causes the least amount of total damage.
And how do you do that? You give ownership, you give all that power to the person whose investment, whose effort is the most critical for creating value in the first place. You protect the incentives of your most important player. This graph from the paper shows the trade-off perfectly. See that curved line? That's the efficiency frontier, the best possible set of outcomes. Now, if firm 1 owns everything, its outcome is right there on the frontier. But look where firm 2 is, way down, far away from efficiency. And it's the exact opposite if firm 2 owns everything. Non-integration leaves both parties kind of stuck in the middle, both inefficient. The right choice just depends on which of these distorted outcomes is less costly overall.
So for your exam, here's your playbook. It's a simple recipe. Step 1, figure out what those key, hard-to-contract-on investments actually are. Step 2, analyze which of those investments is more important, which one creates more value. Step 3, give ownership of the key assets to that party. That's how you set up the firm to minimize the total damage from the holdup problem.
Okay, theory is great, but let's make this real. The paper's application to the insurance industry is a fantastic, classic example of all this in action.
In the insurance world, the key asset isn't a factory or a machine. It's the client list. And the big strategic question is, who should own that list? Should it be the big insurance company, which makes the salesperson a direct writer, or should it be the salesperson themselves, which makes them an independent agent?
So think about the agent's key investment. It's not money. It's their effort in building a loyal base of clients, people who are going to renew their policies year after year. Now, if the company owns that list, the agent is always going to be afraid of getting held up. The company could suddenly raise prices or let service quality slip, and poof, the clients leave. All of that agent's hard work to build that relationship goes up in smoke. So fearing this, they're just not going to invest as much effort in the first place.
And check this out, the data totally supports the theory. It's so cool. Look at the numbers here. For products where the agent's effort is super important for getting renewals, like term life insurance, it's far more common for the agent to own the list. But then look at whole life insurance, a product where clients tend to be really sticky no matter what. The agent's effort matters less. And what do you see? In those cases, the company is way more likely to own the client list. The theory predicts exactly what we see in the real world.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've gone through the puzzle, the model, the solution, and a real-world case. Now, let's just boil this all down into the essential points you gotta have ready for your exam.
This slide right here is your study guide. Remember these points. 1. A firm is just the collection of assets it owns. 2. Ownership means residual control. 3. This only matters because contracts are incomplete, which means ownership is what allocates power. 4. That power is what drives investment incentives. 5. Integration is never perfect. It's always a trade-off. And finally, the big one, the key insight. Give control to the party whose investment matters most. That's how you get the best possible outcome.
And that's a wrap on Grossman and Hart. This framework is just so powerful for understanding why firms look the way they do. But as a final thought, chew on this. What happens when the most valuable asset is something you can't actually own, like people, like human capital? That question right there opened up a whole new area of research. Master this framework, and you're going to be in great shape. Good luck.